This is the INKPULP podcast.
Look how freaking professional you are, dude. Holy
What
crap.
makes you say that? What makes
Who
you say
made
that?
that bumper for you?
That's my man Alan. Although the music is from Mike Realm, so I
Oh,
got
all right.
pros behind me.
Yeah, you got legitimate people behind you. It's
do.
you're the weakest component
No
of
doubt.
that
Surround
that
yourself with
triple.
greatness, and you don't have to be good at anything. I
That's a
mean,
mantra for sure.
story. It's the way
Sean,
to be.
why do you have like a crap load of medication on your desk right now? What are you revealing to our audience?
Oh, these are just some anti-inflammatories.
That's what we'll call it for now. What's news, man? It's been freaking forever. How are you?
Good. It has been a while. How are you?
When's the last time we did this? Pre-New York,
remember.
post-New York?
What's that?
We did the show like this pre-New York, post-New York?
Way pre-New York. I think. Yeah.
What was the last thing that we got into before we said, hey, we need to kind of
I think the last time we recorded was in August.
August? Are you kidding?
I think
we
so.
skipped that many months. August, September, October. Well, not technically the entire month, but it feels like we used to do these at a pretty rapid clip.
Yeah, we did. And then
we had to take a break because we were traveling an awful lot. You and I ran into since August. Where did we run into each other? Once specifically in Memphis, for sure.
Memphis. We did Memphis. We did Rose City.
Rose City. That's right. I remember that. That was a good time, Rose City.
It was a good time.
I'm not being facetious. I really was having a good time.
No, I had a good time hanging with you for sure.
Yeah, you didn't particularly like the show. Is that what I just heard you say under your breath?
No, I mean it was just a slow show.
Slow.
I don't mean slow. It was well run.
Yeah, it was professionally run. It was really well done. I didn't see anything in there that made me go like, oh, that's a little. There's
right.
a random kiddie pool in the back that you just filled with balls and said good luck with that. You know what I mean? Like, I can't remember where I saw that.
That's what we need at cons is a giant ball crawl.
No, I'm not kidding. I saw that at a show.
Really?
Yeah, it was just some random. I don't know what it was. It was like a kid area, and they had filled up what looked like an above ground pool with like a bunch of balls from the defunct, fucking play whatever from McDonald's, and they just let kids go in there.
That's awful.
And called that a kid area.
That is awful.
And I thought, like, this is either being actively ironic or pathetically ironic,
Yeah.
Anyway, the show wasn't like that. I had fun with you there. Yeah, was that the show that we were? I just remember before. By the way, we're gonna get into the hijinks. I want to talk about the hijinks that we get into for every show that we end up doing because it's a lot of fun.
It is
coordinating a show. If I'm going by myself, I don't have any like whatever. I'm only accountable to me. But when we're coordinating a show together, sometimes. First of all, I don't remember when we were the last time that we were at Rose City. If we were ever at Rose City together,
I've never been.
Me neither. I think I had a version of a show in Portland, but it was put on by a completely different promoter.
Yeah, there's another show there.
So here we go. Like, okay, Shawn, let's stay closer.
Right.
And this was actually, in full disclosure, we were very well taken care of, not just at the convention, but also, where we were staying. We have gotten into, and I don't take this lightly, I'm very humbled by it. I'm very grateful for it. I'm sure not you so much. You live a different lifestyle than me.
What does that mean? What's my lifestyle?
You just expect everything. You know what I mean? I'm very grateful.
Oh, I'm entitled. Yeah. I need to check my privilege, Eric.
I think you should. Anyway, what I'm saying is that I was very grateful for the way they took care of us, not just at the show, but obviously they extended us the courtesy of putting us up in a place, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Really,
and
really
took care
good.
Of Ubers and
they did everything that they could to make sure that we really felt like they appreciated our time there, and in return, at least for me, I can't speak for you. Your standards are a lot higher.
Well, you know what?
I appreciate it.
I had a talk with Bob in New York because
Mm.
Bob kind of runs the Artist Alley in Rose City.
Mm-hmm.
He helps
Mm-hmm.
get the guests there and takes care of them. And he had expressed
I
some
almost wanted to say his last name, but I don't want him.
Shaw,
I don't want to dox him. You know what I mean?
Shaw, Bob Shaw.
All right. Oh, sure. There. Good. Congratulations, Sean. You just sent a bunch of emails his way.
In New York, I don't want to say he apologized, but he said, I
Why?
guess in a way he kind of apologized for there were certain things he felt that the show should have done for us that
Oh
he
yeah.
pulled for
Okay.
that they didn't do. One being he felt we should have been at the Hyatt, which was
Yeah, I was
right
gonna get into
across the
that. I was
street.
gonna get into that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So he felt we should have been there, not the actors, mainly because we're the ones lugging over portfolios and table
Oh,
dress
sure,
and all that
sure,
stuff. And
sure.
he felt the actors, they're probably just bringing a pen, most likely, because they're just signing shit.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, so he thought that was a bit unfair. And
Mhm.
I mean, and it's not like our hotel was that much farther, so I think
I
the
felt
actors
that it
would have been
was.
fine there.
I actually, that's not what you told me while we were on the ground. Boots on the ground. You're like, God damn, I gotta walk to this fucking show. I was like, be grateful, Sean. It's a 5-10 minute walk tops. Just get out of here with that.
Wait,
Like I
someone's
expect
ringing the
to.
doorbell. Hold on one sec.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
weird.
This is quality programming, you guys. This is what happens when you're as popular.
Who comes to an office building at 7 o'clock at night when it's dark
Somebody
out?
does. I was just
Trying to
about to say
deliver
this is what happens when you are when your name is Sean Crystal. Anyway, so
Yeah.
here we are at the show. Sean didn't care to walk. Didn't understand. Like
I love
he
walking.
expected like a
The weather
like
was
a little
nice.
tiny direct sort of inline whatever it was, like a roller
I
coaster
enjoyed
ride
the
right to the
quiet walk.
convention.
Honestly, it was the walks
This
with
is
Eric
all
that were challenging.
this is all fake. Anyway, took care of us, put us up in a hotel. Now I had already like reserved rooms for the Hyatt that was directly across the street from the convention center.
Yes.
And I was thinking to myself, like, maybe we should stay there because
Yeah.
it's a
And
stone's throw away, right?
right.
You
Right.
look it up on any map, it says X amount of minutes from that hotel, right?
Yes.
You look it up you look it up on Google Maps from where we ended up staying, it wasn't that much of a difference, right?
No, when
Even
we
you were
looked it up,
puzzled by like, what are you talking about, Eric? Where do you get that many? Like you
yeah,
looked it up and you're like, what is this walking distance that you're talking about?
you
Doesn't
looked
seem
it
like
up
it's on.
and sent me like screen caps, and it said 15-minute walk from the hotel we were at,
Right.
and it said like 5-minute walk from the other hotel.
Mm-hmm.
So I got into town before you and did the walk, and it
Yeah.
was maybe an 8-minute walk from our hotel and like across the street from the other hotel.
Right.
So I didn't
Right. It would have
understand that.
literally been a 30-second walk from the other hotel
Yeah.
and an 8-minute walk, depending on how fast you're walking.
Right.
Sean walks particularly fast, by the way. He leaves his friends behind. He's not the kind of guy. If you're carrying luggage, Sean thinks of you as his luggage plus. You know what I mean? So he's like, I want to travel as light and as sleek as possible, like a comic book drawing Doberman. I think that's what you referred to yourself as.
Is that what I called myself?
I remember you
I
saying
don't
that. So
remember
anyway,
this, but okay.
I ended up reserving a place, and I had debated with you, hey Sean, what do you think about staying at this place? You know?
Yeah.
And you were like, I looked it up. It's not as far as it looks. You get into town and we walked there for the first time. And I just remember thinking to myself, all jokes aside, I was effectively the complainer the entire time because I'm old, right? Like Sean takes care of himself. Look at him. He's got like anti-inflammatories on his desk.
That's a sign of my age, man.
I know, but it's a sign of maintenance. You know what I mean? Like you put things and keep things together. I got like Cheez-Its. I got like anyway. So the entire time I'm moaning, and Sean's like, whatever. It's not that bad of a walk until we get to the Hyatt, which was, I swear, on if I was sleepy and tired and didn't have any strength, I could throw a ball and hit the convention center.
Yes,
It was that close.
It was literally right there.
And it's weird now. And by the way, this conversation is coming from the worst kind of first world problems you ever run into.
For sure.
It's weird to think about how I get into a space that, and I think I was clear about this the last time that we talked, that I wasn't going to do any more conventions moving forward. It's as far as a business is concerned. I may go to come and hang out with you guys, but I'm not setting up at a show anymore because I just really find it exhausting.
It
And
is.
it's in that sort of like mental headspace. And I don't know if you're
Mhm.
feeling the same. It might be different for you. We did end up talking about this. I want you to explain your section, your part, and your outlook. But I just remember that was the second. No. That must have been the third to last show before I did, because I did one. We did one in Memphis, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then afterwards, right after I got home, I almost took right off and went right into Pasadena. I think that's
Right.
the right.
What
And
are
I
you
had
talking about? For work, you had to go in for work.
no. This
Are you
was
talking
for
about Lightbox?
Lightbox Expo.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Wasn't
so
Memphis? Oh no, you're right. Memphis was after Rose City. Yeah.
yeah, it was after.
Yeah.
Um, I have great stories about Memphis. We'll get to that in a second. But
Okay.
I had just come to a point, or I've just come to a point in my career where traveling to a convention outside of hanging out with you guys and not having to like think about sitting behind a table has become really taxing even before I got there. So
Yeah.
I did my fair share. Again, the worst sort of first world problems. I did my fair share, and I genuinely believe stepping out of my own body, just the worst version of bitching and moaning, you know, that I've ever heard myself. Like I can almost hear myself talk about like, why the fuck are we not staying across this? Why are we not staying across this at this hotel that's across the way?
That's what you were thinking? That's the thought that was in your head? I don't remember you expressing that.
Yeah, I mean, I was as a joke, I almost just like walked right into that hotel and be like, whatever room you have, I will take.
Well, then
So that I
I
won't.
feel bad. We could have
You
stayed
should,
there.
is what I'm getting at.
My point was, why spend the money? It's literally a 5-minute
That was
walk
actually
difference.
very listen, I'm about to give you praise, so mark this on your calendar, 26th of October. You had said, hey, listen, all things being the same, which they were not. It was an 8-minute versus a 30-second walk. All things being the same, why don't we just take advantage of this accommodation that they're extending to us? Nothing beats free, Like we started talking on the walk there, you were like, is 8 minutes of free worth the 30 seconds of whatever the heck that would have cost? I gotta be honest with you, I thought about it.
See, now from my perspective, the hotel we
Yes.
were at was literally a 30-second walk from an amazing dispensary.
Yeah, that's
And
you were
I
motivated.
enjoyed having that.
You were motivated by completely different things than I was. You weren't even looking at the show. You know what I mean? You're like, how quickly can I get to a dispensary from where we are? And lo and behold, it was almost across the street. It was literally like
And to be
diagonal from
fair,
where we was.
I
Yeah.
would have saved money by spending money on the other hotel because
Because you
I
spent
stocked
so
up day
much
one
money.
at the dispensary. I
Yeah.
stocked up day one. I was like, I'm good. But then,
Yeah.
like, the next morning, I'm getting up, I'm going out, and Jason Sean Alexander's like, "Hey, can we stop by the dispensary?" And I'm like, "Yes, we can."
Right.
And then
Right.
Jason, our art
You
dealer,
didn't
said
even
it.
put
I
up a
kept
fight.
going back.
You didn't even put up a fight. Anytime somebody would suggest it, if it even sounded like dispensary, you'd be like, no, dispensary? You didn't like, it wasn't even dispensary. You just suggest it. You're like, hey, how about for food? We go to the dispensary.
I mean, it
And we
just
just end
became
up
a
there.
stop every time I left the hotel. I was like, "Oh, we're going out to dinner. Let's go get a joint." And I
Right.
walk out of there with a
Right.
giant bag of stuff.
It is to say that we were in completely different headspaces in as far as what we were
Absolutely.
optimizing for.
But
I was
let me give
optimizing for
big
the
ups.
show.
That dispensary is called Electric Lettuce, which I think
Yeah,
is the best dispensary name I've ever heard, and it was a great
it's pretty
spot.
good. It was a great spot. Yep. Yep. I was there in passing as you guys were like, see you later. We're gonna go and sleep in this place. Remember, you were such a loyal, I would think, in the 3 days that we were there. You went there so many times they gave you a t-shirt or some shit like that,
They
didn't
gave
they?
me a pin.
Yeah. They were like, this guy's fucking been here. He sleeps on the porch, What a great show.
It
All right,
was. It
so
was.
so what was so great about that show? Number one, we had an opportunity to just, because actually what the walk helped facilitate was all the different conversations that we would
Yeah.
have on
Yeah.
the way to the show. One of our good friends, Dave Johnson, who I see to be not just my very good friend, but also one of my mentors coming into the comic book industry. We had hanging out with him is a delight. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
the first nights, and
That's
this
so
is our
influential.
tradition. Every time before we go to a show, we end up going to a really really nice restaurant, and it brings like a good. It sort of acts like a for me. Starts as a starting gun of like
Yeah.
a good meal sets us off on the right foot.
It's
You know
like
what
a
I mean?
blessing. Yeah, it's like a ritual we do that blesses the weekend. Like
It
it's
is, and it
awesome.
feels really good. And on top of that, because it was in his hood, so to speak, it was sort of in his backyard. A wonderful artist, writer, creator friend of ours, a fellow by the name of Jim Mahfood, came out and joined us for our inaugural dinner
Yeah.
for Rose City, and that place was really good.
That was one of the best meals I had in my whole con season. That was a
Yeah,
mind-blowing place.
that was a good place. That was good.
That
Now,
was great.
but we have to be fair, we have eaten at like really like basically shut the place down kind of places. You know what I mean? Where it's like,
We eat incredibly. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. But this place was good.
yeah,
For
it
it
was
was
really
a
good.
Jim's suggestion. We took him at his word. Walked into the place. Everything tasted great. You know,
Yeah, I agree.
hung out with our buddy, who was in our proximity. It was me, then Jim Mahfood. To his right would have been our dealer and good friend Jason Schacter. Right,
Hmm.
directly. Who sat next to me? I don't remember. Was that you?
Me.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. All right. All right. So next to Jay was Dave, and was that it? That's all I
Yeah.
can
It's
remember.
just us five.
Really nice. What a
Yeah.
great dinner. We ended
It
up
was
talking
perfect.
about everything. We're gonna
Perfect.
keep it under our hats what we ended up talking about, but that was some really good conversation. You
It was
know?
great. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
The show I remember going in there and thinking to myself like, oh, I remember these are what conventions look like. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I like to your point, and it was not into any sort of it's not even a conversation of fault. You know, I was about to say like, oh, it's
Mm-mm.
not the show's fault, and that's like, it was just a slow show.
I think I think conventions are becoming more of that.
What's the that you're referring to?
I think conventions are they're attracting more people to them, but these are casual observers of the experience they want to have. Maybe they want to meet an actor, maybe they just want to
Mm,
look and see the
mm,
things, maybe they just want to buy a little stuff for their kids.
mhm.
But it seems to me out of like I did a ton of shows, and I generally did pretty damn good. I definitely had my best shows consistently this year.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
aside from a place like Heroes Con, um, or Seattle, or even Seattle, I felt this. It feels like you've got bigger crowds than we've ever seen, but less money being spent on the artists in Artist Alley.
Sure, sure. So in we walked, had a pretty good show. Anything from your end that you can recall makes you go,
About the show? No, I just had
just
you
your
know what?
experience there. I mean, not necessarily about the show, but like walking around.
I was at a point where I was really fried from doing so many shows, and I was really kind of grateful for the quietness of that show. And it wasn't
Mm.
dead. I mean, I wasn't like
No, yeah,
sitting there
yeah,
twiddling my thumbs. I did get a few
yeah,
commissions and we had some
yeah,
stuff to do, but we had time to chat and take it casually, and that was
yeah.
nice.
Just
Um,
really putz around like a
I
lot, a lot.
enjoyed walking around with you looking at booth setups because
Yes,
like
that was a lot of fun.
yeah, I mean, like we're talking about the culture of comic cons changing a bit, but I think what's happening is because of what I just said, where people are not necessarily coming to buy stuff from artists, artists are finding really interesting, creative ways to present their wares,
Mm,
and that is attracting people to spend money. So I
sure.
think we're getting past the point where, and you and I talked about this, where I think like you could just rest on the fact that I've worked on these books. People are going to come to me because
Mm,
that's what Artist Alley is.
mm,
And I think that is changing. And I
I agree.
noticed that throughout the year, like throughout
I
the
agree.
con season,
I
where
agree.
it's like you used to just throw your banner behind you with your name on it and a piece of artwork, and people are
Sure.
looking for you, and there they
Sure.
go. Now it's like, no, you have to attract someone in who doesn't know you.
Sure.
And what
Yeah.
are you doing to do that? So
Yeah,
in that
absolutely.
aspect, it was really good to walk around with you and take note of what we felt was working
Yeah, sure.
so
We
that
even
we could,
gave, I think, our fair share of compliments to the people who set those booths up. We would
for
go up to
sure.
them and be like, "Your setup looks freaking amazing." You
Yeah.
know, like if you want me to have somewhat of a I would just like a landmark or something that definitely would as a standout.
Yeah.
Their booths were really well put together. Now, for the life of me, I can't remember who they were, but day of, we were like, "Whoa, this looks
Yeah. I
great.
don't
You
remember
set this up
names,
really,
but
really nicely." You
I
know?
remember there was a guy in Rose City who had just posters of like it was like hip hop and
Yeah,
like kung fu flicks
yeah,
and robots all fused
yeah.
together, and he had a great setup and really nice product stuff.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. That was really, really awesome. A standout for me was it was the first, my family came,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We were about a 30-minute drive away from downtown Portland. And it was the first show that my son had ever attended.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And to see him kind of like everybody first of all was really charming about this kid because he hasn't had much exposure to the same kind of pop culture that we had. He has his own kids cartoons that, if he saw it at the corner of his eye, he'd know it right away. But when it comes to like Star Wars and whatever else, He-Man, he's never seen any of that stuff. So to
Oh,
my son, if
yeah.
you're in armor, you're a robot. So
Right.
when I was talking to him, I was like, "So what did you see?" He'd say like, "Oh, I saw this guy, this white robot, and lo and behold, it was like a stormtrooper."
Mhm.
So it was his first show, and being able to have the opportunity to walk around with him was so very cool
Yeah.
to be like, wow, he's seeing stuff that he's never seen before. But there's some things that he's keenly aware of. He's just not ever seen that version, that expression of it before, like Batman and Superman and superhero
Right.
stuff. He knows what those are. He's just never seen them in like what is it? He's never seen them in like shirts. He's never no, well, not shirts, but what are those little dolls with little tiny PVC puppets with the big heads? It's like
Oh,
almost
Funko Pops.
Funko Pops, right? So he's never seen it in that capacity before. So
Right.
he was just in heaven as a kid who loves colors, as a kid who's just like all about you know what that place technically is for, right? In part, not in whole, but like in part, he was in heaven. He loved it. The
Yeah.
second part was that my wife hadn't been to a convention since forever. I can't remember the last time that she went,
Oh,
but
right.
she had effectively given up on going because she was too exhausting for her. It was one of the things. It was one of the rituals that we did annually back when we were not parents, when it was just her and me. And she would look at it. The advantageous position that she would take was like, "Oh, I've never been to that city where that convention is before, right?"
Right.
We'd go, we'd hang out after hours, and it'd be 3 days of that, right? Because in the
Right.
early for 8 hours straight I would have to sit at a convention table where had to find ways to sort of, entertain and distract herself. And then in the
Mhm.
evenings, we'd go do something in the city and just hang out and local stuff, right? But
Right.
she'd realize, that's kind of run its course.
Right.
So she hasn't been back to one in forever. She came back with this one. And I remember her telling me, she's like, it's been years, what feels like easily a decade, right? And she's like,
Yeah.
nothing's changed.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same. And
Yeah.
that was pretty sobering to me to think about like nothing has changed from the casual's eye. Nothing has changed from like a person who's just like as an audience member. But to your point, the business of it has changed pretty dramatically,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
don't think it should be lost on any working professional right now in the mainstream comic book industry that it's not as simple as putting your pages out in front of you anymore and
Yep.
setting up putting a banner behind yourself.
Nope.
And there's a rare few who can do that. We saw it happen with like somebody like Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder. These guys who are like standards, basically the exceptional people in their field.
Yeah.
But even people who had, I don't want to say like a B list, but certainly like one tier below them, a lot of those people weren't getting the kind of foot traffic that they used to be able to get back in the
That's
day.
true.
You know?
That's
So it
true.
is to say the environment is the landscape is changing, and if you're not aware of what you what you bring to that environment. Now, to your point, how you attract people to you, right? I think next 2 or 3 years, some of these guys that we see at the shows are slowly going to fade away.
I agree. I completely
They're
agree.
not. They're not going to be relevant at shows. It's not to say that they're not going to be relevant in their industry,
Right.
but at the shows in which they used to do gangbusters at, where they were like, "Whoa, you really killed it this weekend," by way of like sales, by way of like commissions, by way of the stuff that you were doing. I don't think those are the people that are really attracted to that attracts a crowd anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I think hopefully we'll see this um, appearance fee nonsense. I'm not saying appearance fees in general are nonsense, but like what like comic sketch art does by sucking the entire budget out from the convention for Artist
Right.
Alley, and then
Right.
they're only sitting there for a couple hours a day. I think that's bullshit, and I hope that
Yeah.
we see that disappear. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's
you
yeah.
and I, we go to a convention. We're there to work. If they have paid for us to be there, we are there when it opens, and we are there generally
Hmm.
till around closing time
Hmm.
because that we are a guest of the show and we're
Sure.
professionals that way.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I heard we had great feedback from I can't recall when, and even if I could, I wouldn't want to disclose where I heard it from anyway. But I had heard that one of the prime things to have a comic sketch art in place is that they have such a what seems to be a pretty prestigious clientele, right? And they bring X amount of people into the convention in order for that for those for the convention to like basically see the money back for the kind of expenses they spend on them. But if their clientele doesn't show up until 1 p.m.,
mhm.
that doesn't make much sense to me.
No, it's just a bunch of tables sitting there with nobody at them taking up
Right.
space.
Right.
And,
And the
and
honest to goodness truth is they're there. They could just as easily buy. I remember Jason telling me this the first few years that he was setting up for me. The books move so much better if you're sitting behind the table and you're
Mhm.
able to engage and sign stuff. I didn't put any stock in that, right?
Oh,
Until
really?
much later, and I would see it. I'm like, oh, I'm actually experiencing this. Longer I sit
Yeah.
here, and engage and people can actually see me come to be, sit behind the table and come up to the table and being able to talk to me.
Dude, that's been everything for me. Being it like
Yeah.
people walking by not knowing who I am, seeing my artwork out, it catching their attention, and then engaging with them and like making a fan out of them and making a connection there. That's been great for my business.
Right.
Invaluable.
Right.
I
So
think that's important. I mean,
I think so too. And so to see that, I mean, I don't want to, you know, moan about it too much. To see it from another sort of like artist slash talent rep organization, and they are, again, I think it's a good model to be like, hey, I represent these 20 people who are luminaries in their field. But, and so effectively they're, as a show promoter, they're like, oh, really? You do? So absolutely, we pay for X amount of people that you bring, but those X amount of people don't show up until 2 o'clock. It's a weird space to be in,
well,
like
yeah,
it's almost a disservice, right?
totally. And in New York, it was out of hand. They had 3 aisles,
Who did?
comic sketch art.
You're kidding.
No, it was so obscene that like everyone was commenting on it. And half the people were not there at any given point of the day.
Where a lot of people, not just yourself, right? Because you're a biased piece of shit, but
Yes.
like, where a lot of people commenting on that fact that
Yes.
not the people weren't sitting there behind the table.
Yeah. 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 It was definitely a topic of conversation. And also the amount of real estate they were consuming.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know who it is. Like I think I know who runs. What do you call it? New York. But I just want every organization, and it's not to pick on comic sketch art in specific, but it's just generally that practice of like going in and being like, okay, it's New York Comic Con, give us 6 aisles or whatever it is. Knock it off if you're not gonna, represent your brand and your people well,
Mhm.
especially the accommodation that an accommodation that a what do you call it that a convention is going to show you. And here's what I mean by that. Like, I know we're in a position now as working professionals, right? We've been in this for a little bit. We are given uh, we are given these certain privileges that not a lot of people before, after us have been able to get, right?
Sure, sure.
And I always try to project myself into the spaces of the people who are like, man, one of these days I'm gonna freaking set up a New York Comic Con,
Yeah.
right? I will save up however long it needs in need. I'm gonna get all this stuff together. I'm not even local to New York. That means I'm gonna have to spend the kind of money. I'll stay in somebody's couch. I
And even
will.
before that, they have to apply and be accepted. I
That's
mean,
what I mean. Is
we
that I don't
take
know
it
who's
not
curating
that we
that, but
take it for granted, but, we know we're gonna get accepted.
sure,
What we're
sure,
wondering is, are we gonna get charged for a table at this show or get a free
sure.
table? Like, so
Sure.
yeah, these
But the point
people
is,
are
is it's like the barrier to entry for us. There's very little friction to it,
right, right.
so we can get there. That's not even a problem. Even if they end up charging up for his table, it's not a thing. You know what I mean? Like we can. I think it's manageable for us. Not to say that it's a throwaway thing, but it's manageable. I'm trying to think of the guys who are like, geez, they're doing the math. They're doing the financial math of what it takes to get a table if they've had to pay for a full price driving/flying into New York, somehow finding a way to stay there
Mhm.
while the show in town, somehow finding a way to eat in the X amount of like pay for food while you're in town as you're setting up at this table. If you're there by yourself, you're gonna have to find a way to shove food into your mouth while because
Yeah.
there's no way you're gonna leave the table.
Right, and, I mean, we're lucky in that we have Jason there, like, we
Jason
can
has
just
staff,
grab our
right?
bag and go.
That's right.
But so, I mean, I've learned this just from Jim, like, Jim has to wait until the very end, pack his shit up, not all of it, but, like, the original artwork and the shit you don't wanna leave on the floor, and
Right.
bring it back to his hotel before he can go anywhere.
That's right. Right. So I mean, like even with Jim, who has like I think by way of conventions, innumerable notches on his experience belt.
Absolutely.
Right. Even he has to go through a certain level of like inconvenience so that he can go and just eat. Right.
Right.
We don't. We take shifts sometimes. Hey, some of the guys will leave. Not everyone leaves at noon, but certainly like we go in like within our group, like three at a time or whatever. Four at
Yeah.
a time.
Yeah. I mean, I always bring food back from lunch for, I mean, Jim in particular, and usually, 1 or 2 other people
For sure.
because they
For
can't
sure.
leave, and it's like,
Right.
well, we have the, privilege of being able to leave, so I'm like, "Let me bring you back some spring rolls or something."
Right. Right. And so when I think of that, when I think of just the challenges, and we have those challenges, so I can't imagine is it going to be 4x, 5x, 10x to somebody who's actually going there, right?
Right.
When I see a row of like, these guys who are representing talent and their talent are not there, right? Not until like 3 p.m., damn near closing time. That's being cartoonish. They're there at like noon or sometimes after,
They're
but
there for 2
sometimes,
hours a day. I mean,
okay.
literally, that's it. It's 2 hours a day.
Yeah. And I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Surrender some of those tables to these guys who are just hungry to
And
get an
why do you
opportunity to
need
sit at the
all
show.
those individual tables if not like, you could have half as much space and have a rotation and
Yeah.
tables are
If they're
full.
going to be there, it just doesn't make any sense except for the idea of just like, fine, we're going to have a presence there. And I'm like, at
Right.
some point, this isn't even, I don't know how cost effective this is for the show unless they are
That's what
paying
I'm
for,
saying. It's like,
right?
I
Like,
think that's gonna come to an
we're
end.
making a bunch of assumptions. I'm going to assume that we are 90% wrong about everything. Right? But I would think that maybe there's a situation there in which some of these dealers are actually helping paying for the tables. They're not really being comped these tables. There's all sorts of factors that go into play. But at some point, as the what do you call it? As the dealer, you go like, enough of this. And I'll give you a perfect example. So after this, my last show was Lightbox,
Yeah.
right? And I remember why Lightbox existed, and I don't know if you know the story behind this. This isn't the story, in its full capacity, but in part, is because a guy by the name, by the way, I have such a high level of regard and respect, and I just can't throw enough accolades in this guy's direction. A guy by the name of Bobby Chu. And by the way, if you're not following him, you can go to Schoolism, you can go to Bobby Chu, you can go through all his socials. I just recently he posted up this image that he had sent to me a long time ago, easily a decade back, something that he had generated in 2005 or something like that. Even maybe even before that, 1995. It's on his social media now. He wrote a piece of paper of the things that he wanted to do. Right? Like I think it's 2 columns worth or whatever it is. And he's like, travel the world, hang out with friends, all of like the aspirational stuff. But there was some professional stuff in there as well. What's great about Bobby is he doesn't sit there and tout himself. As much of an accomplishment that he's had throughout his career, between he and his wife Kay, all the projects that they've ever worked on, he never sticks his chest out and says like, "Look how cool I am."
Right.
He's always the guy similar to you who's like, "How can I take this knowledge that I have and multiply it to other people?" Because he knew how difficult it was for him when he was starting out.
Yeah.
The challenges that
I
he
mean,
faced.
I'm in touch with that emotion deeply.
Yeah. So when I don't know if you remember this show or have ever spoken about this show in Burbank called CTN.
Yes.
It's the animated CTN.
Yes.
It's like this show that was almost like animation industry centric, that then got that then started including things like feature film and what do you call it? And I think video games as well. I don't remember. I haven't been there in a long time. But when they were putting on that show and Bobby had a presence there, he started hearing a lot. And by the way, this is not me like starting up stuff. This stuff is ubiquitous online. You can look this up with how many people who have attended CTN have had such awful experiences afterwards. I think I remember a story in which one of the artists who was there, invited by the organizers, they were asked to bring some of their art, submit some of their art so they can have it as part of a gallery that people who were in attendance could then see. When it came time for them to get that artwork back, either the artwork went missing or the artwork came back and it was damaged.
Oh shit.
Yeah. I think I'm capturing that well. I think I'm capturing that accurately. Well, I think that's one of the things that had happened that Bobby said enough is enough. And he said, "You know what? I'm going to go put on my own show." And it just takes that one guy, especially with Bobby, who has his determination. I don't want to say like the dude is made out of money. I'm going to say that he was very deliberate and strategic about how he was going to put it together. But he said, "I'm going to bring it to a place where I know there is an audience." And he's talking about like the college kids that are coming out of Pasadena Art Center or whatever it is. I know there's an audience, and I try to make it as accessible as possible to them. Right? So he puts it on in Pasadena, in downtown Pasadena, where there's like a ton of hotels. Access is easier, as far as like being able to stay. And I remember that first year just being freaking gangbusters. Now you fast forward to what it is this year, when the world has it's reopened up, right? Still a lot of like safety precautions being implemented, from masks to not necessarily the vaccine requirements or whatever the heck that stupid shit is. But they're trying to be as safe and comfortable within reason. And here it was, you come to find out that I can't remember. I think it was in another photograph from Bobby's social media. There is a panel of easily 20 some odd people. When you walk in there, it is a sort of like a great, it fills the entire spectrum of not just the industry, right? Not just the industry that you're in, video games, concept art, feature film, animation, illustration. It just didn't cover that. It covered levels of it, right? It would not just like the ultra professional. Hey, you are the standout. You are the exemplary of that industry,
right?
But here's a person who they have a presence online for their body of work, but in contrast to this person who created freaking whatever franchise,
Right.
This is not that wouldn't be career wise. That would, that's not a fair boxing match. They're way
Right.
outclassed. But by way of their quality of work, they were sitting there. And I was fascinated by that because there's plenty of people that were there. I had no idea who they were, but I
That's
could
like
take a
the
look at their
opposite of a Comic-Con.
I could take a look at their work and go like, you're really good. You're not my cup of tea, right?
Right.
But you're good, you know?
Yeah,
I
whereas
find out
comics, it's
later,
all about celebrity.
I
Go
found
ahead.
out later that it's actually a panel that's helping to inform who gets to be in that show. And I'm like, holy crap.
Like a jury that decides?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There's obviously a set of, they take all the submissions, they pull it all together, and at no point did I think to myself, yeah, you probably got in on the secret handshake, or things
Mhm.
are trending this way because, or excuse me, you're in because stylistically, visually, things are trending this way. Wasn't like that at all. It didn't have any of that.
It was a real celebration of the art, the
It
craft.
was,
Yeah, that
and the
for sure,
individuals
yeah.
who are responsible for generating it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And but they had to get sponsors. So Procreate had a huge presence in the middle of the floor. But I look at them and I'm all like, they're inviting people to come and use their program who have never had access to it before, because they know the industry is really not heavily reliant, but has taken on their program pretty
Yeah,
organically.
for sure, for sure.
And what's strange is that because it was college students, because it was people with a certain sort of amount of disposable income, primarily there to maybe get exposure and maybe get feedback for their work, maybe go there and see the kinds of people they look up to online and hear them talk inside, um, um, whatever, as presenters, as like people who are doing like demos, be in the audience for that, ask questions and so on.
Mhm.
Like, the vendors, the artists who were there, I would say 90% of them were catering to that crowd. There were a
That's good.
handful that sold originals. There were a handful that were just sitting there going like, "Hey, I would look at it and be like, clearly that thing is way out of a budget, a college kid's budget,
Right,
in
right.
general, I'm generalizing. But it's like, but there's so many more options for them to sort of be grateful to support their favorite artists. So you do that stark contrast
Yeah.
to like a curated show like Lightbox, who I think has had, I haven't done it actively, but I've not heard any negative reviews about it, except for I couldn't get into some of the panels because there were so many choices, or there was like only a small area and I really couldn't hear the speaker. Like,
Right.
that'll improve, but generally
Yeah, and
as
that
an
also
experience
brings
of the
them
show.
back. That also
Yeah.
it leaves them something to come back for.
Anyway, I recommended it to you, and I would hope that
Oh, I'm
when time
going.
comes again.
Yeah, if I can get a spot next year, I'm definitely going,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Did you see Ramon there?
I did. I ran into Ramon, gave him
Because
a big old hug. I
he
hadn't seen
messaged me. He
him.
was blown away. He really
Yeah,
enjoyed that
he
show.
should be. He should be. He
Mhm,
had a great spot in the back with
mhm,
a lot of the different kind of not this. He's in the not in the back, but he's in the separate sort of um, structure that is connected by a tunnel to the main floor where all the artists were. But traffic was consistent throughout. It wasn't like, oh, you're over there in the corner and oh my gosh, I didn't even know you existed. It was almost
right.
like this
Like
really
us in
great.
Memphis.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it. For me, having never been to Memphis, that's another show that was really super humbling as an
Yeah,
experience. Like,
yeah,
I've never been to Memphis before. I've never, we've done a handful of those kinds of shows, but man, when people engaged with you at that show, they really engage with you, and
that's
you had
true.
time to be able to talk with them.
That's true.
The setup was a little bit, unorthodox for sure. It wasn't like just a giant convention floor filled with stuff. It was multiple structures connected together.
Mhm.
But I mean, like, they maximized for that space.
And they took incredible care of us.
Oh,
I mean,
outrageously good
incredible.
care of us. Yeah.
I've never had a convention be that attentive to the
Yeah, can we
talent.
call out a couple of those? Like, I remember Dan specifically.
Yes.
and
Yes.
his wife.
Oh.
Oh,
Oh.
that charming, beautiful lady's name escapes me at this point.
Yeah. Me too.
Oh, she was so good. But anyway, the both
Yeah.
of them just
Mm-hmm.
took phenomenal care of us.
Mm-hmm.
Just phenomenal care of us. I mean, I don't. It got to the point where they were coming by, what, hourly,
Yeah.
every couple
Seemed like
hours.
it.
Just,
Seemed like it.
you
Yeah.
guys okay?
Do
Do
you
you
need
are you
anything?
hung? Can we get you anything? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what in the heck? This is how you take care of people, man.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, this is how you establish. And they kept saying things like, well, we want you to have fun because we want you to come back.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, you ask me again, I'll be back here in a heartbeat.
For sure.
One of the few shows where I'd be like, I may not make a ton of business, but because you guys are so amazing, I'd
Yeah.
love to be able to thank you all over again in person. You
Yeah.
know,
And we had a good time.
we
We
did,
definitely had a good time.
we did. That's some good. There was some good food there, and that was a compacted crew that we went with. It was you and me, and who else went with us?
Jason and Micah.
Jason and Micah. That's a
That was
that's
it.
a lovely young lady to be able to hang out with at a show, Micah.
For sure.
It took a while for me to get used to hanging out with her because I'm such a standoffish curmudgeon. But to hang out, like everybody is kids to me, you know what I mean? So to be able to hang out with that talent is pretty freaking amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And there was
I think the
a lot of artists that we admire there. So that
yeah,
and it was such a quiet little show that we got time to talk to them, and that was nice.
you know what was cool for me now that you bring that up? I remember everybody got put up at the same hotel, which is like a shuttle ride away. I remember standing in line at the hotel lobby for that great little coffee shop at the front. Remember that?
Yeah,
These are really good food.
that was a
And
Starbucks, wasn't it?
no, it wasn't. It was like the
What
restaurant for that hotel. They
what
served
was it?
Starbucks, but it wasn't one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Um, and I remember meeting Dennis Cowan for the first time. That's
Yeah,
not the first time that I met him, but that's the conversation. That's the longest conversation I'd ever held with him, and one that was in earnest of just us talking.
yeah,
And I thanked him for that, not just for all the work that he's done. Obviously, it's probably too much. It's probably under thanking him for all the work that he's done. But that documentary that he did in honor of, well, it was a celebration of Milestone. But there was a
yeah,
bit in there
yeah.
where he was talking about Dwayne McDuffie and their relationship when they
Mhm.
first started off that imprint for Image. I had the pleasure and the honor of working with Dwayne back when I was working on Justice League for Warner Brothers
Oh,
Animation.
you worked with Dwayne. I didn't know that.
I did, and then much later on when we worked with each other on the relaunch of the Ben 10
Okay.
for where he was head writer for Cartoon Network.
Mhm.
And so seeing Dwayne in that capacity was really sort of like it was. I got misty at the I like saying, "Oh yeah, that's right." You don't hear about those guys as much as you used to,
Yeah,
because there's rarely any version of innovation that's happening on the mainstream comic front anymore. You
that's
don't get to hear about
damn true.
Dwayne McDuffie's. You don't get to hear about, I don't know, whomever else that was coming up back then. It was like, well, you guys are really trying something, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And I had
Anyway,
never met Dennis either, but I mean, he did the cover to one of not just my favorite albums, but one of the greatest hip hop albums ever recorded.
yeah,
And so to get to talk to him about that and hear his story was I
that was
was
amazing.
nerding out. That was an
Yeah,
amazing story.
yeah, yeah. And there's a guy that just didn't put on any sort of airs at all. He was just
No,
hanging out.
no,
It was
yeah,
really, really cool dudes. And I think that's what,
really
if there's a
warm.
common theme across the board for that Memphis show, it's just like a bunch of people whose work we admired, never met them personally, got
Mhm.
to meet them then for the first time. And they did not disappoint, not just in their body of work, but obviously who they were as people.
Absolutely.
Um, where
And
we were
they had
hanging out at the airport, you know, when we landed with Dan Brereton,
that's right.
right?
Yeah,
And I'd liked Dan's work since forever. It was good to know that he's finally back in the world, is back in the mix again and back in the world when it comes to like going to conventions. I never did get the opportunity to go to his table and take a look at, if he had brought originals with him, I never got an opportunity to take a look at him because those are always a treat. But that
yeah,
was
yeah,
great,
yeah.
you know?
And they had a really nice local mom and pop coffee bar set
Where
up
was that?
in the show. In
Oh,
Memphis.
in the show. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was some good
so you
coffee.
could get like a really nice. I could get an espresso, like a nice one, at the show.
You're a fancy guy when it comes to
I
espresso.
am. I am.
You're a fancy, fancy guy. Can we talk about that?
Sure, sure. Let's talk about that. About my bougie ass.
Not your bougie ass, but okay, again, in Memphis, we go to our inaugural beginning of the show. We went to a beginning of the show meal, our beginning of the show dinner. Place was great. Place was like really well put together,
I know.
really good steak, really good. Sean's laughing because he knows
I've
where the
been
story is
telling this
going.
story since it happened, and everyone's
So like,
baffled by it.
so like, we go, and at the end of the meal, in order to like as a helpful digestive, right? I order an espresso. And I don't know, like your listeners are probably as fucking bougie as you, Sean. But I think even if a
My listeners
person,
are.
even if even if they didn't know, even if they didn't drink an espresso, they would be able to identify. They'd be able to point at it and be like, "Yeah, I know what an espresso is. I don't drink it, but I know what it looks like." Right.
Mhm.
So at the end of the dinner, I say, "Can I have one of those, please?" And like some sugar or whatever it is. Right. My guy comes back, and it was like a fucking coffee cup like this. It looked like he had just poured it. He had just put the fucking Sanka on. You know what I mean? Like it looked like it. And so I thought, oh, I think I asked for the wrong thing. You know, like maybe he heard me say, I don't know what the fuck he may have
Yeah,
heard me say.
it was black. There was no crema on top, as they call it,
Listen to this guy knows all the fucking terms, you know?
and it was thin like coffee.
It was coffee. It was black. It was basically black coffee. So I
That's
said,
exactly what it was.
hey, I wasn't about to say anything. I can't remember what made somebody from the table mention it. Anyway, whatever. I said it to the guy, our waiter. I said, excuse me, I asked for an espresso. And he points at it like without missing a beat, as if I'm pointing at the sky. You know what I mean? Like, hey, tell me what that is. Point at it, sky, you know? He points at it with a level of confidence that made me like stutter, right? He points at it and he goes, that is an espresso. And I swear to you, he said it so confidently. I thought, like, I think this is an espresso.
And then he said, I just made it fresh.
Right. And no, that's the punchline, which is like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to be nice, you know, like,
Right. We're all confused. We are so confused.
We're so confused by the level of confidence that's exuding from this guy telling me that the sky is purple, you know? And I mean, like, and I'm like, I don't think it's purple, man. You know, like, have you looked up? And he's like, oh, yeah, no, I don't need to look up. I'm confident that it's purple. Yeah. It was that level of confidence. He was pointing his black fucking cup of coffee and telling me to my face, and it's espresso. And he goes, you look like, and I had such a perplexed look. He goes, what's going on, you guys? Right. He had enough awareness to ask, like, what's going on? Is there something that's not right? And I said, I was this close to showing him my phone and being like, see this? Like, what you gave me is not this, you know? So anyway, and I go like, I don't think this is like an espresso. Yeah. Who made this?
And we know for a fact it's not an espresso, but we're doubting it. But he's confident it is.
Yeah, he's confident. So this is the kind of guy. I swear to God, this is the kind of guy that would sell me like a really shitty car, and I'd be like, yeah, this is really awesome. But the way I go like, who made this? You know, he goes, I know it's an espresso. I just made it myself. And from there on down, I did not say anything. I didn't drink it, but I didn't say anything more because that's like, I'm not going to argue with the guy who is under the firmest belief, right? That this thing is what it's not, you know?
Now, I didn't let it go at that moment. I went to the bathroom so I could go by the bar and look for an espresso machine. Yeah. Because an espresso machine isn't something you just keep in the back.
Oh, it's obvious.
It's a very expensive piece of equipment, and they're usually very like pretty and they really belong on a bar.
Well, it's obvious. When you see it, you go like, that's an espresso machine.
So I went to the bar and saw nothing. So now I'm like, well, if he made it, I'm just like, what makes him think he made coffee? Why does he call it espresso? And my conclusion in the end is
The way that you could sleep that night is
exactly. What allowed me to go to bed that night was, okay, he thinks espresso is when you get a bag of coffee and it says espresso roast on it.
you
That's
think
what
that's
I
what it
think.
is?
That's my guess, because some coffees, like espresso, is a very, very, very dark roast generally. Now there are different
Sure.
degrees of
Sure.
different espressos, but generally it's a very dark roast. Some call it Italian roast, French roast. Sometimes it says espresso roast. So that was my guess. But the thing that took it further for me was there was espresso on the menu. It was on there because he could ring it up and make it. So was he part of a cult of people who think that's an espresso? That they've been selling these espressos to Memphis people for 5-10 years, and no
And
one
it's
has
the way
ever
he
said,
also
"Hey,
said
buddy."
that. He's all like, I go like, well, when he was asking me what my expectations were, I was like, okay, here. So like an espresso is typically in a small cup. It's like, you know what I mean? It's got a little tiny handle in it. It's really super thick. And it goes like, we make it a little bit bigger in Memphis. And I damn near fell out of my fucking seat.
Maybe that's it, Eric. Maybe there is a Memphis espresso. Maybe that's a thing.
Maybe that's what that is. But I have never questioned.
But I got
reality.
an espresso at the con, like at that little coffee shop. I ordered
They
an
knew.
espresso and got
Well,
an
it's their.
espresso.
I would think that it's their business. None of them are sitting there trying to bamboozle you into like Memphis
I
espresso.
wish because that was a closing dinner that night. So I wish we would have had that experience and could have gone
No,
back
that
to
wasn't
the
a closing
con.
dinner. That was an opening dinner.
No, that was closing. Our
No,
first night there, we ordered in the room.
that was not a closing dinner.
Yeah, that was our closing dinner. Because the next morning you were gone, and I went.
You
I had a
cried.
later flight. What?
You
Yeah, I
went
was
in the room
very,
crying.
dude. That day sucked. I woke up. I was like, my flight was at like 4,
Yeah, yeah.
and everyone was gone. And I was at
Yeah.
this hotel in the middle of nowhere. I got a lot of work done though. I did. I just sat in the room and did work.
There
But,
is no way that we went the night before Jason and I took off.
yeah.
I'm gonna confirm with Jay.
No. Okay, you're right. You're right. It was the night before the last, because the last night Jason and I went out for barbecue. You stayed in.
That's
Yeah.
right.
You're right about
That's
that. It was the night before that. So it was Saturday. It was our Saturday dinner.
But that first night we ordered it in, really?
Yeah, remember?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm such a curmudgeon now, Sean. We're gonna be having less and less of those dinners on those first night. I'm just like, I just got here. I'm gonna freaking just stay in the room and watch whatever the heck.
But it
I'm
was so
doing.
good in Portland, but you didn't have to travel far.
This
That
is
was
true.
an easy trip for you.
Yeah, it was an easy 20-minute cab ride for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's us catching. Well, we didn't even get to we didn't even get the chance to talk to New York.
Yeah, I want to do New York. Let's do that next time because I got a lot.
All
I
right.
got a lot to talk about on that one.
All right, let's do that next time.
So
All right,
we're
it's pretty awesome.
recording Friday. All right.
I'm gonna do this outro and then we can call it.
All right, cool.
Here we go.
This is the INKPULP podcast. This is the INKPULP podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.